Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Big Apple Hockey. There is a lot of stuff we have to discuss. The Devils keep rolling. The Islanders keep rolling. The Rangers are not rolling. But we also got the Hall of Fame inductees of the 2022 class that we have to discuss. And, are the Devils just not getting enough respect right now? We're going to go more into that. I, of course, am your host, Mark Williams. And I'm joined by the man in the bottom square again, the host of the Final Buzzer, Mr. John Volkowski.
Nice Hall of Fame class last night. I know we're going to talk about that in a bit, but happy for a lot of those guys. So definitely ready to have some discussion about that. And we're going to be talking about next year's possibilities as well. There's a notable first-time inductee or first-time eligible inductee next year that we all believe is probably going to get in on his first try, and he definitely deserves it. So we'll talk about that.
There's definitely that we're going to talk about in a moment. And Mr. Anthony Garacco, who is just basking in an 8-2 last 10 games for the New York Islanders.
Yeah, it's a good stretch. They're playing real good hockey right now, and let's break it down.
Yeah, Anthony, I think we're just going to go right into that right away because after all, if you remember 10 days ago, we were doing the first Ranger Islander game as a pregame show, and there was talk of the Islanders potentially dropping to 2-7. Yeah, that's not happening. They're right now, they are, I have it right over here. They're 11-6. They began a 3-game road trip to Nashville, Dallas, and Toronto after they beat Columbus in overtime, beat Ottawa on Monday. They did fall to Arizona last Thursday. By the way, Anthony, the Rangers hangover has got to be a real thing.
Yeah, I mean, perfect world, you want to beat a team like Arizona at home, but they've squeaked out some wins against some pretty good teams. So it is what it is. But overall, you can't complain. They're playing good hockey right now. They're scoring goals. They're getting good goaltending. Mark, a couple of weeks ago, we had the Bar Talk topic about Sorokin leading the league in save percentage by like Thanksgiving end of the month. He's third now, so he's creeping up there. So yeah, everybody's pinching in right now. I mean, even Zach Parise is playing at like a half point per game pace. Guy's 38 years old, but his engine's always running out there. And when you have guys like that playing well, it really helps support the top guys. Which, speaking of, Brock Nelson's rolling. Barzell's playing at a point per game. More on him later. And they're playing good hockey. And you know what, Mark, right now, while obviously everyone says it's still early, you always have to include that, whether you're talking about a team that was supposed to be really good and is bad, and vice versa. Maybe everyone said last year was just a perfect storm of everything that went wrong for them, the COVID, the road trip, and they really are that same team that made to the conference finals 2 years in a row. Right now, that's looking like that could be a valid case, and maybe if this keeps up in another month or two, I have to apologize to Bigelow and eat some crow. But right now though they're playing really good hockey. I mean, it's really not an area that they're really playing poorly in, and all their top guys are being their top guys, what you want to see. And I also can't say enough about Noah Dobson. Noah Dobson has 12 points. He's still producing. He's actually playing at a higher pace than he did last year when he had 51 points. So who knows how high he could finish. But just overall, everyone's going, and hopefully they stay healthy, knock on wood, and it can continue. So we'll see.
Now, before I just toss this off to Phil to get some of his thoughts on the Islanders recently, I got to ask you this question. Have you ever eaten crow, Anthony, and what does it taste like?
You know what? I haven't, but I gotta imagine it's probably very bland. Maybe like dirt. Maybe it probably tastes like dirt.
I've eaten it many a times, and sometimes when you get the players that they see everything on TV. Yeah, we're gonna get. Oh, don't worry, Cora. We're getting to that one. When you see guys on TV, they respond to the critics. Just keep in mind, you prove them wrong, and then if you prove them right, that's the other thing too. So sometimes people don't need to be criticizing us because of things. Philk, what are your thoughts right now on this recent Islanders hot streak?
I know we've talked about this before. I mean, it's good to be a third period team, and it's good to have that comeback magic. But you definitely don't want to continue to get behind in games. That's not a good thing to be playing from behind in most of your games. I don't understand how they continue to win like that. I mean, I do in a way, but I also don't. But they're playing well. I mean, there's no other way to really describe it. They're playing well. They're just getting a lot of contributions. I mean, you have Zach Parise on pace for about, I would say, just under 40 points in an 80 game season. That's really kind of a surprise. And remember, I talked about that 37, 38-year-old drop off. You know, Parise is actually kind of rebounding a little bit here. It's weird. I mean, I'm guessing the guy must be a gym rat of sorts, because to be in the physical condition that he's in and have the motor that he has at his age is pretty impressive. Oliver Wahlstrom, after a really hot start, has cooled down a little bit, but I mean, he's still got some decent numbers. Noah Dobson's really the guy. Noah Dobson's the guy who you look at this team and you just say, wow, like they found a stud there. And I mean, Anthony knows I wanted the Rangers to take him in 2018, but they didn't. They went with a certain Vitaly Kravtsov, who's been out of the lineup recently with tooth problems. Yeah. Tell me that.
Yeah, no, we're going to go off on him in a little bit too, Ranger fans.
So. But yeah, they've been pretty good. And Anders Lee is just about under a point per game right now. I'm shocked that he's still even at these numbers. Matt Barzal, again, we talked about this yesterday in our little group text, but how long is no goals and a point per game pace sustainable? Because you look at the guys that have scored 100 goals or 100 points and less than 30 goals in a season, and the list is a very, very, very short one, but it's some elite names in the history of the game. Your Joe Thorntons, your Ron Francis's, Adam Oates, and so on are just a few on that list. But even point per game seasons with less than 30 goals, maybe even less than 20 goals, it's really defensemen, but the list of forwards is very small. So yeah, I like what I see from Matt Barzal. It looks like he's taking the initiative to make the plays, but he still hesitates to shoot. And I've said this for years. I want to see him shoot more. I know he doesn't have a great shot, but he can beat goaltenders with it. It's just a matter of becoming a less or a more diverse offensive threat. And that's where you want to see the goals there, especially if you're an Islander fan. So cause for concern, somewhat, just because I don't think it's sustainable. But again, can you really complain when he's a point per game player at this point? So it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't,
Well, that's why before we even go to my thoughts, we're going to go right back to Anthony on this one. Matt Barzal, cause for concern with 0 goals?
Yeah, listen, in a perfect world, you obviously want to see him light the lamp. But as an Islander fan right now, the team is winning. He's still, at a point per game player. So it really is hard to complain. So you want to see him score, and I'm sure it will come. But Barzal, some guys just, they can't shake that, pass first mentality. I mean, Josh Bailey's whole career, sometimes he'd drive you nuts, and he still does it, where he has a clear shot and he passes. Barzal does a similar thing at times. I think just he tries to get so creative that, he's always making that pass to maybe try to surprise a defender, whereas maybe he should just shoot the puck. But, he's skating really well. He's driving the play. He's getting the defenders to back off of him, which is creating space for other players out there on the ice. He's seeing the ice well. So, I mean, I want him to score. But again, as long as he's putting up the points, I really don't care at this point, as long as he's producing on the score sheet, and he is. So sooner or later, the dam will break, and, he'll probably get a couple. But, right now, again, it's hard to complain. There's only 2 players ahead of him in assists. What I said the other day, McKinnon and Draisaitl at the time. I don't know if anyone's played since that overtook him, but that's some pretty good company to be in. So,
it's McKinnon and Draisaitl. McKinnon is 20 and Draisaitl is 19 right now.
Okay. Yeah, I thought so. And, he was asked this question too, about he hasn't scored a goal yet. And he has said similar things. He's like, I'm happy with my game. I'm playing well. The team's winning. And for him, that's what he cares about, is the team is winning. So, Yeah.
Well, I do have to say that there are instances where being pass happy is a problem. There was I think the first power play they had against Arizona on last Thursday. I was at the game, and he ended up leaving like a drop pass sort of for Dobson, and it was a good 10 feet away from him. Sometimes he could get a little bit too cocky with it. I don't think that's particularly the case with him. It's just, you know what? You could just be like, all right, well, I can make all these passes. Shoot the puck a little bit more. If everybody knows you're going to pass, you just got to let them know, make them be honest. But again, when Matt Barzal, once he scores his first goal, he'll probably score his second goal like the next day, or if not the next shift after that. So there's no reason to be too concerned about that. One thing, Anthony, though, I have to kind of disagree with is when you said maybe they might be the team they thought they were going to be last year. I think this team is completely different. I really do. I watched the game on Monday, and at one point, Adam Pelech took the puck at the right point, went down to the slot, went all the way over to about the left faceoff circle, and took a shot. When the hell did they do that under Barry Trotz? They didn't.
No,
they weren't that free skating type of team. They're doing it now.
No, like I said early in the season, you could tell their D is activating so much more. They're playing with a much faster pace. And speaking of D, I know we the three of us have talked about him, and I commend Phil for actually giving this player a lot of props. But Scott Mayfield has been playing really well. I really can't say enough. The game. It was the game against Columbus where they came back. He tied the game with a big goal, and has 4 already. And I know he's not known to be an offensive defenseman, and this will end up being a career year offensively. But not even that. He's just playing so solid defensively. His game has really grown so much. He's really important, and I know we talked about it. I would hate for the Islanders to lose him in the offseason if they can't pay him what maybe his market value will be, but I would love to keep Scott Mayfield going forward because he's really important to the team. So we'll see what happens as the season develops, but I would love to keep him in the orange and blue. I just don't know if it's feasible.
And both me and Phil are shaking our heads on that because it's going to be impossible with the economics and the budgets on that. Yeah. It's going to be tough, especially it's going to be more interesting when the trade deadline comes, right, Phil?
Scott Mayfield's not getting dealt at the deadline. If that's what you're trying to stir up over here, Scott Mayfield's definitely not getting.
Just saying, it could happen.
I doubt it. And the Islanders are probably going to be in a playoff position or at least fighting for one at that point. They're not dealing Scott Mayfield at that point. The fact of the matter is that, like Anthony said, they're probably going to lose him because he's going to command anywhere from, I would say, $4.5 to $5.5 million. And if he hits the market, somebody's going to pay him that. We've seen guys like Carl Alsner, who I don't think was ever as good defensively as Scott Mayfield was, get some big money on the market for being good defensively. But Scott Mayfield's going to get paid. Someone is going to go give him that bucket and that bag, and that's going to be it. And he's probably not going to be an Islander after the season unless they get creative and they clear up some cap room and get rid of some guys. So.
I can't even blame him too, because the guy's been making what 1.45 for the last 4 or 5 years. He's got to look out for his family.
There's a sweetheart deal. Oh my god!
Yeah, that is a hell of a deal. That is one of I wanted to put that as one of the more underpaid contracts that we had when I made the list of the 10 most underpaid players in the league. But I mean, that is a sweetheart
underpaid
deal.
I think in the salary cap era, I would have to say.
Yeah, it's. I wanted to put it on there, I didn't, but because there were other deals I still thought were great bargains. Anthony, I got to go to this one though, because all year, and we were waiting for this in free agency of the Islanders and their interest in Johnny Gaudreau. So Gaudreau plays his first game against the Islanders at UBS Arena, and I have this quote right over here from him, which is Gaudreau saying he was confused, if not amused. It was last Saturday night on Long Island, and every time the Blue Jackets winger touched the puck, Islander fans at UBS Arena booed him. I was talking to my coach after the third shift. I was like, I don't get it. I didn't even talk to the Islanders throughout the whole free agency. So did we read too much into that? But we also had inside information that Lou had a dollar value about him.
You know what? that's really a real head scratcher, because we were doing the show and I vividly remember, one, our good pal Dave Pagnotta tweeted at one point the Islanders and Devils. It was down to the Islanders and Devils. And on TSN's broadcast, I think it was Pierre LeBrun that reported the same thing. So these aren't schleps. So how do these guys get information that was so wrong?
Agents is probably feeding them false information to drum up the market and get somebody to make a bid that they weren't.
Yeah, I guess.
Beforehand. That's got to be it.
Or the other one is, as Goudreau said, he didn't speak to the Islanders. The agent could have spoke to them. I mean, when it becomes serious, that's when the player really has to get involved, right?
Yeah, I mean, you could be right about that, but honestly, I think this was a ploy. We know that the Islanders were in serious talks like this close to getting Nazem Kadri. So it actually kind of makes sense that Gaudreau never really talked to them, because if they had their sights set on Kadri, then, that would have been their guy. And, Lou doesn't, he likes to drag his ass on things sometimes. And that's what happened with Kadri. So, honestly, I would say that Gaudreau's probably right. I don't think the agent ever talked to him. I think the agent was probably just feeding him some misinformation to get some other teams to drive up their offers.
By the way, this is a little bit weird. I have to throw this one out. As I was silencing my phone, by the way, if you're ever doing a podcast, you probably could silence your phone so that way your text messages don't go off. But one of my friends just texted me and said, Scott Mayfield in the Snug last night. That's a bar that's right next to Croker's. What are you going to do about that? I was like, all right. The Snug is right across from the McDonald's.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, God. You got to get him in Croker's, bud.
I got to get him the Croker. Oh, again, I got Leo. Kevin from Leo's that knows him pretty well. So, but I know we've spent 17 minutes on the Islanders right now, so we're actually going to move on, everybody.
But one last thing, just so everyone knows a little bit of news. The Islanders waived Nikita Soshnikov yesterday, and he cleared waivers. So just some speculation that they're going to be calling up another forward. Now that they have the roster space, whether it be Simon Holmstrom, who's been playing well in Bridgeport, or, maybe one of the younger guys, but it looks like they might be making a change amongst the forward position. I mean, the other night they scratched Josh Bailey in favor of Ross Johnston, which, I mean, not really a good move. Bailey is a lot better than Johnston, so maybe they're looking to bring someone up to play in place of Bailey. So just something to just keep your eye on. They might be giving a younger forward a shot.
Are you saying William DeFore, or you're saying someone?
No, honestly, I don't know. But clearly they want to get a different look of someone on the roster, being that they waived Soshnikov because they couldn't bring up anybody else. They're at the roster limit. So now that he's in Bridgeport,
points in 15 games for Josh Bailey. Oof.
Yeah, so I see
why you would want to get rid of him.
Yeah, so I see why he sat. But Ross Johnson isn't the answer. So this could be something they're looking at.
Well, currently right now, the New York Rangers find themselves in fourth place in the Metro Division. They had wins over Detroit and Arizona this week, but they lost to Nashville. And my take on the Nashville game was UC Stars was standing on his head in that game. Oh, my goodness. The Rangers, their post-Islander hangover, they had a 6-goal third period to win 8-2. Adam Fox named one of the players of the week, 2 goals, 6 assists, and 8 points. But, Phil, the Rangers are about to embark on a 4-game West Coast road trip. Seattle, San Jose, LA, and Anaheim. And the LA and Anaheim games are back-to-back. It's over the next 7 days. Is this a make-or-break road trip for the Rangers?
Yeah. If this was Bar Talk, then this would be around right now. I would definitely say so, because you literally have 4 games against some teams that you should beat. All these teams are beatable. And if you come out with anything less than, I would say, a 3-1 record, it could spell trouble for this team going forward. 2-2 would be passable, but you really have to go 3-1 on this trip. You have to. I would say you need to really kind of take all 4 games and really start to get in a swing. I mean, their last game was a win against Arizona. They played back-to-back nights, but so did Arizona. Arizona lost to New Jersey. So they both played 2 games in the span of 24 hours. and the Rangers did not look good for the first half of that game, as I said on the final buzzer. You know, you bent in the first half, but you didn't break. And in the second half of the game, they came out and they played well and kind of locked things down and scored some goals. But you need to build on that. And this team has not built on their wins. They let their losses build up for a bit, where they lost a few games in a row. But you can't continue to play the way that they've played in terms of inconsistent play, slow starts, piss poor efforts. That needs to stop. The leadership. Don't
forget piss poor finishes.
Yeah, and piss poor finishes as well. And they need to really get together. I think this leadership group should have a meeting with the team, a players only meeting, and just get the troops together and get on the same page and start coming out strong and start showing like you care about playing, because they just have not given the efforts in some of these games that would indicate that they really care about this season. So, I mean, I don't know, like here, I've said this before. I don't know if this team has a strong enough leadership group. And if this leadership group is not strong enough, then maybe they need a guy who's a disciplinarian, like Keenan was to that 92-93 group when he came in 93-94. So, again, this is another great comment here. The Rangers look hungover. They're missing the eye of the tiger, that hungry look that they had last year. And they came back in games. And now this year, they're getting down in games and they're getting frustrated and giving up at times. So, I mean, a couple of these games, the Arizona game, they showed a lot of patience. Good. The Philadelphia game, they showed a lot of patience, even though they were dominating Philadelphia. It was just a matter of time before, you know, they let up that goal and Chris Kreider won it overtime. And then, you know, the Detroit game, they were down, 2-1 in that game. And they came back and they scored 7 unanswered goals to win that game and absolutely just blow Detroit out of their own building, off their own ice. So build on this, start giving us more consistent efforts. Guys like Chris Kreider need to play better. I love what I've seen from Adam Fox lately, because the boneheaded mistakes were there earlier in the year. It seems like he's playing more like the Norris winner from 2021 than he was earlier on in the year. I need Jacob Trouba to be a hell of a lot better. Again, if he's hurt, sit. But if he's not, start playing better, because his play started to rub off on Keandre Miller, who's made a lot of those rookie mistakes that he was making last year in the first half and in the year before that as a rookie. So he needs to be better. I need more from Vinny Trocheck, and I need more from Alexis Lafreniere. But the guy who I'm really happy with, who I think is just going to break out any day now, I think the points have been there recently. I think the floodgates are going to open real soon if he continues it, is Kaapo Kakko. Kaapo Kakko has done everything he can to help this team win games. He's played great defensively. He's an absolute monster along the boards. I mean, he's showing the confidence in his moves. You could see it when he's cutting back out into the open and driving to the high danger and the dirty areas. Just needs to shoot the puck a little more. That's the only thing I would ask from him, is just shoot the puck a little more and just be more confident with that. The same way that I get on Matt Barzal for. So, Kaapo Kakko looks great. Filipino looks great. And keep Ryan Reeves and Ryan Carpenter out of the lineup. Just please, because that fourth line with Gaudreau, Blais, and Gauthier looked really, really good against Detroit. So I would keep that line together until you make a move and have a reason to force one of those guys out.
Well, the one thing that Kaapo Kakko and Filipino have are healthy teeth, right, Anthony?
Yeah.
Like, that absolutely kills me, by the way. But we're gonna get more on that. We'll talk about that when Q&A starts up. But Anthony, your thoughts on the Rangers' recent hot streak?
Well,
not hot streak. I mean, last week.
I think that this trip coming up is certainly make or break. They're playing a Ducks team who has, ready for this, zero regulation
wins.
Zero regulation wins. If you lose to that team, that's an embarrassment. San Jose, even though they beat a good Vegas team 5-2, and they've had some impressive wins,
Dallas too.
They're still a team that you have to beat. And then LA and Seattle, give them credit. They're playing good hockey right now, especially Seattle. So those are the two toughest games of the trip. But I agree with Phil. You really need to be 3-1 coming off this
Gotta
trip
be 3-1.
based on who they're playing. So they have a little bit of an opportunity here to pick up points. I'm not saying San Jose or Anaheim would be cakewalks, but they're games that they should definitely win. And then again, Seattle and LA will be a little tougher, but again, very winnable games. As for the Rangers overall, if you look at their leaderboard, if you will, Panarin,
but NHL Network has the Pacific Division on here, and the goal differentials for the Sharks and the Ducks were -10 and -25 for the Ducks. Oh.
That's
sorry, Anthony. Go back to
if you look at the Rangers, their stats: Panarin 22 points in 17 games, fantastic. Fox and Lafreniere have 19 and 17, very good. Kreider's, I think he's got 14 points, 17 games. But after that, there's a drop off. They need to start getting. So that's what 3. Well, Trocheck has 11 points. So after some of those 3, 4 top forwards on the roster, where's the production from the rest of the roster? I mean, Filipino, 8 points, 11 games. He's actually looked really good, and he's missed a bunch. So I won't include him in that. But the rest of the forwards, you need to produce. I mean, Alexis Lafreniere, he needs to start putting up points. Some of these other guys on the roster need to support these guys because you can't win when you only have 3 or 4 forwards being productive on a roster. It's just really hard. They have to start. Phil alluded to Kakko. He's been great in every other area. He's great along the boards. You can see the confidence. But again, at some point, regardless, you want to say, okay, you want to be able to say, okay, more than, well, he's just playing well. You want to start seeing the points. So
you want to start seeing it on the score sheet. Yeah,
they need to start getting some support. Once that happens, I think they'll take off. But right now, it's really, really hard to win when you only have a couple of guys producing on a nightly basis. So I just want to see more scoring out of the rest of their lineup. And as far as their defense, I mean, don't get me started on Jacob Trouba. I mean, he's been really bad, and that hurts a lot. Because he's your captain too. Chance, you want to see your captain, his play, lead by example on the ice. And he's simply just been bad. There's really no other way to put it. He's been real bad. So he needs to step up. And Ryan Lindgren, he's one of your best all around defensemen. He's a warrior. He plays hard every night, and when he's out of the lineup, you can see what it does to the rest of their defense. But you know what? Again, golden opportunity on this West Coast trip to really get back to the point where they are contending, for first or second in the division.
Well, I look at the same trip that Toronto pulled, I think it was about a month ago, and they went 0-2-2. The Rangers cannot do that. They cannot afford to do that because even though we're going to talk about the Maple Leafs and Bar Talk in a minute, just want to say that to you guys. They definitely can't do that. And why 3-1 really needs to be more of what they need instead of, let's say, 2-1-1 is because they just pissed away a point last week. They had a 2-goal third period lead. You can't be giving away points in this league, especially they gave away 2. They didn't give away 1. And in a way, they gave away 3 because it was their division rival. But we'll get on that in a minute.
I'm just going to talk about this when we wrap this up. Panarin's a -8 of -8. There is no reason for him to be that bad at 5-on-5. And he's got to be better. You know what? The points are coming on the power play. That's great. But he's got to be better overall 5-on-5. And again, one thing that this team has in common from last year is not just slow starts or anything like that. It's the fact that they're almost devoid of production at the right wing position. They are not getting production. And as Anthony said before, you cannot win with 4 of your top 6 forwards scoring. They found a way to do it last year because Igor was Superman for the first half of the year, or for all of the year. But, I mean, he needed to be Superman for the first half of the year. But you need right-wing production. So if they're not going to get that, then a move is going to have to be made sooner than later with this team. Because what they're doing right now is not sustainable in terms of winning games unless Igor goes back into God mode like last year. So as people
And
think
right
they
now,
just
it
look
doesn't
good.
seem to be on the horizon. Anthony?
Well, the last thing I was going to add was that when they played the game against Nashville, I saw a lot of people criticizing Halak. He was not the problem. He wasn't the problem at all that game.
Not that game.
I
The first goal I would say was weak,
Yeah.
but he wasn't the problem overall.
Overall, his save percentage is 883, and he's 0-4-1. You need you need better output from your backup goalie.
Yeah.
You do.
Yeah.
All right. Phil, what are you looking for specifically on this trip?
I want fast starts. I want 60-minute efforts, or the closest you can possibly get to a full 60-minute effort. They have shown you that they can play 60 minutes in a game. We've seen it twice this year, and we've seen it against a good team and then a team that's kind of floundering right now that was good at the time. So there's no reason why this team can't come out and give you an inspired effort and really start revving it up offensively. And playing some good defense. I need more out of Jacob Trouba. You wanted that captaincy? Now play like you have it. Play like a leader. Go out there and lead by example. And that's one of the biggest things I've seen with Gallant is that he doesn't hold the right people accountable. Start holding Jacob Trouba accountable for his play. Because if he's not going to play well, then you know what? Sit. And send a message here. So that's what I want to see. I want to see accountability. I want to see hustle. I want to see passion. I want to see fire.
Well, what do you guys think? We want to know what you guys think. How are the Rangers going to do on this road trip? What do you think about the Islanders and their recent play? Throw it all down in the comments below. We got a lot more that we're getting to, and we have to talk about the Hall of Fame inductees of this year, I should say. I don't want to say in last Monday, but that's not right. By the way, guys, do you realize this is the first time in God knows how long every inductee that went in on the player side, 0 Stanley Cups, not a one.
Wow, yeah.
That was something I thought about, and I was getting on that one. So that's been some of my thoughts on those. The Hall of Fame inducted Daniel and Henrik Sedin, Roberto Luongo, Daniel Alfredsson. I'm not going to even try with that name. Herb Carnegie, Bill Clement, and Al Morganti. Guys, what were your thoughts on the inductees? And Anthony, we'll start with you.
I don't really have too many issues with it. I mean, the Sedins, no issue there. They were great players. Very, very unique. How often do you see a set of identical twins play their whole career with each other and have similar numbers and just be in lockstep with each other their whole career and being great people off the ice and putting up elite numbers? I mean, you don't. They're a case that you'll probably never see again. It's well deserved. They didn't get a cup, but they went to the finals. They lost to Boston that year. So no issues there. And Daniel Alfredsson, he's a great player. There's no doubt about it. And what we were talking about in our group text was that I was just surprised to see a guy like Pierre Turgeon, who has Alfredsson, beaten every single category, is not in, but yet Daniel Alfredsson gets in. So it's not that I have a problem with Alfredsson.
And we got more players that have been snubbed for a while by the Hall.
I don't have a problem with Alfredsson getting in over a guy that I think should have been in ahead of him. That's the bone that I have to pick with it. But Daniel Alfredsson was a great player for Ottawa. I mean, he was huge on those teams in the early to mid 2000s. Great player. Wasn't afraid to get in the dirty area. And he had a lot of skill too. But again, I just think when you look at a guy, and Wicked actually just mentioned Mogilny, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But Mogilny, Turgeon, I mean, some of these guys I think deserve to be in before Alfredsson got in. But overall, congratulations to all of them. Roberto Luongo too, I didn't touch on. Great goalie. It's all well deserved, great careers. But sometimes you scratch your head and wonder, how some of these things happen in order, I guess you could say.
By the way, everybody, we're going to be poking a little bit fun at Anthony in a moment when we talk about Roberto Luongo in the Bar Talk. Phil?
I was shocked that Alfredsson got in a bit. I think because of the Olympic gold, I think that's really a big reason why he's getting in is because he's the number 2 scoring player all time among Swedish-born forwards. So that's probably a big factor as well. He had 1,100 points. I know he's not really close to a point per game, but when you look at the player itself, you got to ask, where was he in terms of, rankings amongst like his generation during his time? Was he one of the top 10 best players during his time? I think Alfredsson was probably in like his peak years was probably right outside the top 10 in terms of best players in the game at the time. So I think that might be part of it too. I respect the player. Am I his biggest fan? No, I don't dislike him at all, but I was never a huge Daniel Alfredsson fan. I always admired his game because he was really smart, and he was just a pain in the neck every time he played the Rangers. It seemed like he was scoring against them. So I could see the case for it, but I also can see the case against it and why, people would be mad that guys like McGillney and Turgeon and Roenick haven't made it, but Alfredsson yet has. So, again, I get both sides there. Luongo absolutely deserved it. 4th all-time in wins. Just incredible goalie. One of the 3 best goalies of his generation. I would say his generation is the Lundqvist, Price, that generation, Fleury. I would put Luongo right behind Lundqvist as the 2 best goalies of their generation. So that's just me. And it's funny enough you mentioned Pat Verbeek because Pat Verbeek is somebody that I actually mentioned in the group text yesterday when we were talking about this. So I like the Sedins getting in because one of them, there's an MVP and scoring titles within them, so they have individual hardware. They have that Olympic gold from 2006. They're 2 of the better Swedish-born players of all time. And, a lot of the plays that we see going back and forth, those short give-and-go passes, is because of the Sedins. They revolutionized that. They were really the first duo that could really do that in tight as well as they could. So I'm okay with the Sedins there. Herb Carnegie definitely deserved it. I don't know how it took this long to get Herb Carnegie in there in the builder category. So that to me is kind of baffling. And then
there's another name I'm going to mention in a minute that's baffling me that he's still not in a second, but go ahead.
Yeah. But definitely, I like Al Morganti too. I
love Al Morganti.
Yeah. For me, he was one of the guys that was always all over ESPN's broadcasts. Mm-hmm. So it's good that they recognized him. I'm very happy for him. He deserved that too, especially as someone who obviously aspires to be in hockey media. So, I like this class. I really don't have any problems with it, and I'm happy for all these guys. Congrats. You all deserved it.
So, and I do have to say, I kind of said it to you guys before we went on. I'm like Bill Clement, they're just putting him in now. Everything that he's
I don't get that. I don't get why it took that long for him either.
All that. And by the way, Pete, you're stealing an answer from me. Give me a second. But I guess, you know what? I'll have to throw it up there now so that way I can get it out there. Because who's been snubbed by the Hall for too long? And I'm going to have to give my answer, which is supposed to be a surprise answer, but Stan Fischler. Yeah. How the hell is Stan Fischler not in the Hockey Hall of Fame?
Yeah,
and the funny part about Stan Fischler is he's okay with it. He's like, I'm in the USA Hockey Hall of Fame. I mean, Stan Fischler's got about easily 60 years of reporting on hockey, if not 70. It's just,
I just don't get it. When you think of hockey historians, Stan Fischler is probably one of the top 3 hockey historians you're going to think of. What's his name in Montreal? Stubbs, Dave Stubbs.
Yeah,
he's another one. I mean, we interviewed him, Anthony, on Off the Post. No, was it? No, it was the other show, not Off the Post.
So we interviewed Stan Fischler on Off
and
the
we
Post.
Interviewed Stan Fischler.
Yeah.
So I mean, look at this, over 100 books.
Yeah,
100 books.
Yeah,
like that's crazy. But I totally agree with Stan Fischler. Yeah, I mean, I saw a comment from Pete before about you talking to him about Pat Verbeek constantly. I mean,
Yeah.
for me, if Joe Nieuwendyke's in the Hall of Fame and so is Daniel Alfredson, then why is Pat Verbeek not in the Hall of Fame?
I think
Why?
that's a guy that needed one Stanley Cup to really kind of cement it.
But it's okay. So, but it's the Hockey Hall of Fame, not the NHL Hall of Fame.
Which we're going to get more on that in a moment as well.
And if I'm correct, Pat Verbeek was on the '87 Canada Cup team. I believe so. if I'm correct,
that would have been around the time that we did the what if about the Devils, and that I think he had a 4-goal game, and I think Muller had like a hat trick in that game or something. Like there was something outrageous.
He's got World Junior Bronze for Canada in '83, World Championship Silver for Canada in '90s or in '89, and then World Championship Gold in '94. And he was on the silver medal winning team in Canada for the World Cup of Hockey in '96. So,
yeah. By the way, I forgot who they lost to win the silver against. I forgot.
Yeah, that was a really good U.S. team. And yes, Pat Verbeek was on the '99 Stars, so he has.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he was on the '99 Stars, so he does have a cup.
Yeah, so
I forgot all about that first. I always forget about him on that team, and that's just. Oh, by the way, now that I'm thinking about it, was he on the 02 Red Wings?
No, he was on the 2000 Red Wings. He retired, I believe, after that.
All right. I thought he had the O2 Cup with the Red Wings because when they decided to just
he went back to Dallas actually for 02. That was his last year in the NHL was 02 with the Stars. He was with Detroit for 2000 and 2001, and then he went back to Dallas. So,
but we did touch on guys Roenick and McGillney. Those guys are trailblazers.
I don't understand how Alexander McGillney's not in.
We're going to probably double that in a moment, but what about a guy like Keith Tkachuk? How is he not in? 500 goals, an American born player. I think he's got. Trying to remember where he ranks on the American goal scorers because there aren't that many Americans with over 500 goals.
But Madonna, Roenick, Mullen, Tkachuk.
The first ever winner of the Rocket Richard Trophy.
Yeah. No, he's not.
I mean,
not the Rocket Richard. No, I believe he's the first ever American to win the goal scoring title in the modern era, but not but he didn't win the inaugural Rocket Richard.
All right, then he was one of the last players before they announced it. Because remember NHL Power Play in the late 90s where he endorsed it. I was named after a goal being scored, and you just heard the ka-chuk as he shot it in the net.
You would think that 538 goals and over 1,000 points is good enough to get in. Those are two pretty important benchmarks.
And also an important international career.
Yeah. Well, I guess there's still time. We'll see.
Yeah.
No, but where do you rank the player at his peak, in his peak years, in his prime years, in terms of his peers? Keith Tkachuk, for me, you definitely got to be a top 10 player in his peak years.
Yeah.
I mean, he won a goal scoring title in 1997.
Yeah.
So, to me, I don't get why. I mean, again, World Cup of Hockey gold in 1996, silver medalist in 2002 in Nagano.
And that was a great team. Like people forget about that. Everybody wants to discount Salt Lake. Sorry, Anthony.
He's got 2 50-goal seasons too.
Yep. So I don't know, man. I don't know.
And he did it in an era when you didn't get 50-goal seasons.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, guys, let's just finish up on this segment. Next season, here are the first timers that are going in: Henrik Lundqvist, Justin Williams, Jay Bouwmeester, Corey Crawford, and Brent Seabrook. By the way, Justin Williams, thank you very much for torturing me. I have never hated my own name more than every time that you scored en route to winning the Conn Smythe. Guys, and Anthony, let's start with you. Who are you putting in the Hall of Fame next year?
On that list, I would say,
and
Henrik
even the people that aren't in.
Henrik Lundqvist on that list, I think should get in for sure. Then I'd put in Pierre Turgeon and Alexander Mogilny. I think it's about time those two get in. But Jay Bouwmeester and Corey Crawford, Justin Williams, Brent Seabrook. I mean, those guys got cups, and I know sometimes Stanley Cups can what get you in ultimately, but I don't know individually if they've done enough to get in otherwise. So that one's a little tough for those guys. I mean, not bad players. I mean, they were all integral players to those, their respective teams, but I get, the thing with Crawford they're going to look at is Pete just right. He's got 3 cups. So they may look at that and be like, 3 Stanley Cups is impressive and throw him in there. But me personally,
I think he's only got 2. Because he wasn't on the 2010 team, right?
He might.
I think he was the backup.
I think he was the backup to Niemi.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure. So
All right,
I mean, for me personally, I'm putting in Hank, Mogilny, and Turgeon.
All right, Phil, who are you putting in next year?
I gotta add to those 3, and I gotta put Jeremy Roenick in finally. I don't understand how Jeremy Roenick is not in the Hall of Fame. I mean, he's 513 career goals. He's top. I believe he's top 3 all time in goals by American-born forwards. In terms of points, I'm pretty sure he's also top 3. Roenick had several point per game seasons. He had back-to-back 100-point seasons. He's one of the last players to do that, not named Connor McDavid or Sidney Crosby. Actually, Sidney Crosby never even did that in his career. He fell short because of injuries. He would have 06, 07, and then 08 he was short. But you know what? Jeremy Roenick needs to be on that list because he was also at his peak. Jeremy Roenick was absolutely one of the top 10 best players in the NHL. You could maybe even make a case for top 5 in the early 90s. So I definitely think that Roenick deserves to be in there. Alexander Mogilny is a trailblazer. And I'll say this. Trailblazers, provided that there's a decent body of work, trailblazers should all get in because they open up doors for so many other people. And even if you don't want to put them in as players, you put them in as builders because they're building something with what they're doing. And to me, Alexander Mogilny was the first to defect. He opened up the doors for everybody else. Well, he technically wasn't the first to defect from Russia, but I mean, he was really the first Russian to kind of, get over there. Peter Stastny, of course, defected, but he was a Czech-born player and there were different circumstances. But Mogilny, his experience, you gotta look up the documentary on him and check that out because his story is something else. And he opened up a lot for Russian-born players. If it wasn't for Alexander Mogilny, I don't even know who we'd have over here right now.
What's funny about that, Phil, is that documentary definitely is a lot shorter than the time he spent in the trunk of the car trying to defect. I mean, how many hours? How many hours was he in that? I keep forgetting the number on that. So, I mean, thank you very much, Mike.
Corey Crawford, by the way, only has 2 cups. He has 2 Jennings trophies, 2 cups.
Yeah, Cristobal Huet was the backup goalie for Niemi.
Yeah.
When you talk about Marc, I'm sure you want to get the bar talk, but when you talk about Hall of Fame and you start to think about like what ifs, and I know this player is not a Hall of Famer, but if he played longer, you think what would have happened? So Ziggy Palffy, 713 points in 684 games. You got to think if he played, let's say 1,200 games at the way he played and his point per game total, you got to think, would he have been a Hall of Famer? because again,
And
you
a
know,
Slovakian too. How many
that's
Slovakians?
One of the 3 Islander players I've ever liked while they were on the Islanders.
those are pretty impressive. Even his last year in the league, when his back was shot, 42 points in 42 games for Pittsburgh.
And that was with a bad Pittsburgh team too.
Yeah.
That lost Mario Lemieux, I think, after the first month of the season.
Yeah.
And that was Sidney Crosby's rookie season, if I recall correctly. I think
Yes,
they had John LeClaire on that team as well.
Yes, and Marc Recchi.
Yeah, and Marc Recchi. Well, because Marc Recchi had to play everywhere, and he had to go back to all of his teams. If Marc Recchi didn't play for a team twice, did he ever play for that team? Like, he played for the Flyers at least 3 different times, I think. But there are a lot of good names on there, and again, I think we said them all. Roenick for me, I would put in Henrik Lundqvist easily. Vinny Danfus, I think he's a bit of a compiler. I think that's the problem with Vinny Danfus. He's always a second line center. Now, when you talk about guys like Pierre Turgeon is almost the ultimate what-if player, because all of us can look at Pierre Turgeon's career and put a line after that Dale Hunter hit, and he wasn't the same.
I don't agree with that. I really don't agree with that. All right, so that year was a big offensive spike for a lot of players across the league.
I think he was 132 in points. I think that was 132.
Yeah, I don't think he was ever going to replicate 132 ever again. I mean, he only had one other 100-point season, and that was 106 in 1990. But, I mean, he had some damn good years after that.
1993 was probably the last, well, maybe 96, you could argue.
But
the last
I
great
agree,
offensive year in the NHL.
Phil. I don't think the hit on, because that following year he had 90-something points. Then when he played for
only 69 games, he had 94 points.
Yeah, and then he had 96 points for Montreal a few years later. So
in 96,
that was the Renaissance.
And then in 97 he had 85, and then he had another real big bounce back year in 2001, which again was an increase in offense in 2001. That was a kind of an increase.
With Dallas, right?
No, St. Louis.
Oh, okay. Because I know he finished his career with Dallas. I couldn't remember what year it was. But all right, so guys, who's not in the Hall of Fame that you want to get in? Who's a good what if player you were talking about? Anthony brought up a great question. I have to ask you guys about that one. Who's a player you think, if not for injuries, was a Hall of Famer?
Ziggy Palffy.
Yeah, Ziggy Palffy. How about this? Mike Richter. There you go. I asked why Mike Richter isn't in right now, but that's just me. And I know. So
maybe you know what? There's a case for Mike Richter if not for the injuries, and then the Rangers not knowing how to build a defense in front of them either.
But Philk, guess what? Mike Richter's name is going to be coming up again in a moment. First, we're going to clear out of all these. Let's hide the ticker, and we're going to do some bar talk.
Yeah. Wait.
Yeah. Oh, I know it's there. I was actually trying to get there. Here we go, guys.
Shot. This is the easiest I've ever to answer.
I'm going to say beer. I can't even begin to describe.
I'm actually going to go crazy. I'm going to buy everybody around on this one. All right, everybody. Welcome back to Big Apple Hockey's Bar Talk, where we are gauging our confidence on NHL topics based on our choice of drinks. Brain fart right there, everybody. Are you so confident you're going to buy everybody around? Are you just feeling so-so? I'll have a beer. Or, oh my God, just give me a shot, please. I need a shot so badly on this one. Play along in the comments down below. Let's see you guys put them in. By the way, once again, a reminder, I still have a couple more of these Big Apple Hockey. Actually, you know what? I'm not sure if I do. Let's just take that off. Phil, we got to go with you first on this one. The New York Rangers line juggling will lead to actual chemistry eventually.
I'm going to say beer just because I'm hopeful. Line juggling doesn't always seem to work. It's a risky strategy because players need time to acclimate with one another. It's not like the Sedins, speaking of line juggling and chemistry, that you just have instant chemistry with someone like that. Like, I remember the first time I played with Anthony and I really kind of hit it off, and we played very well together. But it was just like sometimes you have that and sometimes you don't. And line juggling really doesn't help. So I'm going to say beer here.
Anthony.
I'm gonna go beer. Sometimes putting the lines in a blender can work because you kind of strike gold when you find two guys that just click, or even three guys as a whole that click. But sometimes it can kind of get you all out of disarray a little bit. So it's happened before. So I'll go beer.
I'm going to go beer on this one, too. First off, let me just say, during our Rangers season preview, Phil actually had this long story about him and Anthony and how their chemistry was working. So then people were screaming, somebody stop Ovechkin. But
oh, yeah.
Yeah, I do have to say, so I do have to say this.
Game.
Maybe this finally will end up with Philip Hedl and Artemi Panarin together, because the strength of Trocheck and Kakko, it could be at least cycling and grinding it out. Hedl was more, I'm going to find the open area, get open, and get a goal. So maybe that'll work with that. Perfect timing, because a guy on the trade block is Bo Horvat. The New York Islanders should go after Bo Horvat, even though he's a center. Anthony.
I'm gonna go round. I know a lot of, say scoring wing, mentioned Patrick Kane, Tarasenko, your prototypical wings that can snipe. But as you saw in the offseason, Lou came this close to signing Kadri, who was a center. So it just goes to show he doesn't really care what position the guy plays. If he thinks that he's going to make the team better, he'll do it. And the interesting about Bo Horvat is that the game where Cal Clutterbuck got hurt and they were down a forward, where Lane Lambert put Lee, Nelson, and Barzell together, for the few shifts they had, they dominated out there. Could lead credence to, you get Bo Horvat, he's has so many options that of line configurations. They can put Nelson with Barzell, and not to mention causing a matchup nightmare with having another center in addition to Horvat in the lineup. So he's a guy that would certainly move the needle. He's on pace to really have a better year than last year, which was a career year for him, where he had 31 goals. He's 27 years old, kind of fits long term. So I would absolutely love to get Bo Horvat. He'd be a tremendous add. So, I'll go round. The only thing that I hesitant is on the cost. He's going to, probably command a pretty penny with the way he's playing right now.
Phil?
I would say round, because the Islanders need a goal scorer. Whether or not they'll actually do it is another story, just because of the fact that I think they would have to give up a significant portion of what they have left in their farm system to get him. And that to me is a big problem. But I mean, he's the type of player that they absolutely need. I just wonder how they fit him in cap-wise after this season, because you're going to lose Mayfield. I mean, you're going to lose Varlamov's hefty contract as a backup goaltender, which will help, but you're going to lose Mayfield, so you're going to have to replace him. And then Oliver Wahlstrom's due for a raise on top of that. So that $5.5 million or so that they gain in space is probably going to be chewed up by a lot of that.
Yeah, I'm actually only going to go beer, because we mentioned the other options. I think the Islanders need a trigger man. I think they need a Vladimir Tarasenko, and then they're really dangerous, and watch out for that. And once that happens, because I think they got guys that could be a Bo Horvat. They got, like, Brock Nelson's a great center. You got Barzell that's there. You got JG Pajot, who's your matchup center, and a great matchup center at that. Thank you for that 2017 playoff game, JG. Still, I hold a grudge about that.
Oh, he cannot go a segment without bringing up JG Pajot and bringing that up.
Because it still hurts. That's what it is. Also, I had to kill another 10 minutes. Otherwise, I had to go on. Guys, by the way, there is a great soundbite that happened yesterday, and I'm actually going to have to change that background for it and get the timer on. Let's go to that soundbite right over here.
What can the Devils do to gain a little bit more consistency throughout those full 60 minutes?
I mean, we're on a 9-game heater. I'd say we're doing okay.
All right. So
what is the question that she asked?
She said, what do the Devils have to do better to get, or to get tighter, to get better in those situations? So Jack Hughes, of course, comes back with we're on a 9-game heater, so I guess we're doing okay, which it's 10 now, by the way.
Yeah.
Jack Hughes and the Devils aren't getting enough respect, and I'm going to start the timer, and I'm also going to say, guys, I got to buy everybody around, and it's really that we're waiting for the wheels to fall off, but we also should appreciate what they've been doing. I'm not a believer still. I'm just still not. I'm Lindy Ruff kind of tends to go pedal to the metal with his offense. They're right now on their 3rd string goaltender. What is it? Schmid? Isn't that like Captain Hook's second in command, or it's something like that? But I mean, it's just I'm not a believer on it. Let's see what they're doing though. Everybody's got to stay healthy, keep doing what they're doing. Jesper Bratt, though, got to sing his praises. He's doing amazing. Philk.
I'm going to say Beer just because of the fact that, again, I'm not a believer in them either. They do deserve some respect for what they're doing, but I mean, they're not beating great teams in this. I mean, again, they beat Detroit 6-2. Detroit's not really a great team. The Rangers scored 6 goals in 1 period on them. That should tell you all you need to know about them. Colorado was out without Landeskog and Nichushkin, and they beat them 1-0. They beat the crap out of Columbus 7-1. Beat the crap out of Vancouver 5-2. Edmonton's an up and down team. I mean, McDavid and Draisaitl could help them, but they're not a great team all around. Calgary is the one team that sticks out to me. Okay, like they beat Calgary and they beat them in 2 close games. That's impressive. Ottawa, not a great team. They went to overtime with them. Arizona 4-2. Montreal 5-1. I mean, they're not consistently beating the top tier teams in the league. It's not like they're going around beating Boston or Seattle or something like that. Even Seattle, I'm not really a believer on right now, but I'm just thinking of teams that are playing well. They're not beating Carolina 5-2 or 5-1. So I'm going to say Beer.
Anthony.
I'm gonna go round. I mean, I agree with Philk a lot in the sense that they haven't beat too many great teams, but when you win 10 in a row in this day and age, that's still pretty impressive, regardless of who they're playing. That's a lot of consistency, and that's you don't really see it too often. And it's getting to the point where where you win 10 in a row, you put so many points in the bank, you almost get to the point where like you're really giving yourself a really good shot to make the playoffs unless you completely fall apart. So what the Devils are doing now is giving them a real strong shot of actually making the playoffs this year. So again, they got exciting players in Hughes and Bratt. Sharon Govich is playing well. I gotta give it to them. They're playing really well, and I think sometimes they still get overlooked.
And just to conclude with this, the Devils have coming up at Toronto tomorrow. Home for Toronto tomorrow night. No, it's at Toronto, at Ottawa, home for Edmonton, home for Toronto, at Buffalo, home for Washington, and home for the at the Rangers to close out the month of November. I'm still not sure if we're going to be fully bought in, but we're going to have to buy in sooner than later. All right, guys. And by the way, I never flashed that the Devils are currently on a 10-game winning streak, even though we said it a lot. Another team that's always talked about, the Toronto Maple Leafs, 5-2-3 in their last 10. Maple Leafs have fixed their problems. Anthony.
I mean, Beer, I don't think any of us ever doubted that they would, make the playoffs. I think they have too much of a talented team not to. So, yeah, they're playing well right now. But again, they'll make the playoffs and then fade out like always. So, I mean, Beer.
Phil.
Shot, because their problem is not regular season wins. Their problems are the playoffs, and that's really their problems. And yeah, they were in a little bit of a slump there, and that happens from time to time. But I mean, I'm going to say Shot because there's nothing about this team that I've seen where that'll get them over the hump in the playoffs. So Shot.
I'm going to go with Shot as well. The reason why is because I'm still doubtful on their goaltending. I can't help but be doubtful on their goaltending. And even though their goaltending really hasn't been that much of a problem, I mean, Matt Murray made his second start of the season last night. and beat his former team, the Pittsburgh Penguins. I'm not sure if that's his first team he played at Pittsburgh. His first time he played at Pittsburgh either. So I would love to look that one up. I wish I would have known that before I just said something. But it's, I mean, I don't see it with Toronto. Now you're going to lose Jake Muzzin potentially for the entire season. And I wish him the best because back injuries are not anything that is anything to joke around about. So I hope he's going to be all right. Philk, Sharks GM Mike Rear said they'll listen to offers if teams inquire about Erik Karlsson. The Sharks will move Erik Karlsson this season.
I'm going to say round because I think if the time to do it is now. I mean, before he gets any older, and I really, you're going to have to cash in on a guy that has like over 10 goals as a defenseman already. I mean, he's leading all defenders in scoring the last I checked, but he's having a renaissance year. Actually, I don't even know if you can call this a renaissance year because he's having a year like he's never had before. 10 goals and 24 points in 18 games. That's ridiculous. Those are forward numbers, not defenseman numbers. Usually defenders, that number looks like five or six goals right now and 18 assists. It's like 6 goals and 18 assists for 24 points in 18 games. But these look like forward numbers, what he's doing. And he's doing it on a team that's really a bottom feeder. They're not playing well. They don't have a good coach, obviously. But Karlsson's really having a year of years, so they have to move him this year. It's got to be around. If they don't, they screwed the pooch there.
I am going to go with Beer. I mean, I think you're right about it. I think they better do it now. I'm going to look at these numbers that are pretty much, to use your term, forward-like in a different way. You have 11.5, and that's what you're paying for 11.5 million through 2027. If they move him this year, the San Jose is going to have to eat 50% of that money. They're going to get a sweetheart deal back because you're basically saying us eating the 50%. If you get him in his prime the next 2 years, then at least that takes away from any of like bad seasons he might have towards the end. He's healthy right now. He appears to be back. I mean, you got to like the way he's playing. If this is the Ottawa Erik Karlsson, everybody's going to get in line for him. And if you're San Jose, you would eat that money easily because you could go, we just got $6.5 million we could do with anything. Because Erik Karlsson is going to be worth nothing to them pretty soon. So I think they're going to have to move him, and that's just what that's going to have to be.
5.75 million to eat over the next 1, 2, 3, 4 years. I mean, that's tough. That's the only reason why I would think that it could not happen. But currently they have 27,000 in cap space. But if I'm telling you, if they eat 5.5 million, that's a player. I don't know if they're going to eat 50% on it. I could see them eating maybe 25% and making it a manageable, because if Erik Karlsson is still playing at a near point per game pace as a defenseman, let's just say he's putting up like 60 points a year going forward. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's still really good, and that's worth I would say maybe about 8-9 million at that point. So I mean, that's more feasible, but yeah, I don't know.
I mean, even still, eating $3 million every single year, that's going to help a lot too.
Yeah, and that's going to be more doable for a team like San Jose. So,
Phil, actually, I'm going to pull Anthony out for right now, but leave him in. He'll get back in a second. Phil, last week we talked about the Rangers getting 6 goals on the Red Wings. They're 4-4-2 in their last 10. The Red Wings will not be in playoff contention. I didn't have a qualifier for it, so we'll say the Rangers aren't. The Rangers, the Red Wings aren't going to be a playoff team this year or in playoff contention. Yeah, that's got to be within 10 points.
All right. So are we asking if they're going to make the playoffs or be a bubble team?
a bubble team.
I'm still going to say beer. I still think they could turn things around and get there. Making the playoffs is another story. That's going to be tough for them to do at this point. I just they haven't taken the steps that I thought they would take. I mean, Lucas Raymond looks great. You have some other guys on that team, like Mo Sider looks really good still, but he doesn't look as good as he did last year, if you ask me. And I figured that adding someone like Ben Sherratt would have helped him. But some of the guys that came to this team just haven't made the impact yet that I thought they were going to make. I like David Perron so far, 11 points in 16 games. You figured he'd be a little closer to a point per game. Dylan Larkin is a point per game. Dominic Kubalik having 7 goals.
Dominic Kubalik's playing great.
Yeah, I don't know where he's got all that from, but that's great. But Lucas Raymond still playing good, but not as great as last year, if you ask me. And I need more out of some of the other guys. I need Michael Rasmussen to start, taking the next step. Pius Suter hasn't really been great. Moritz Seider's got to put up more than 5 points, though. He's playing good defensively, but the offense just isn't there right now for some reason with him. So he's got to put up some more points.
Which has been great for my fantasy team, by the way. Yeah. And Phil, I gotta go beer on it too. I don't think they're gonna have so many other problems because they're still not tight defensively. And I don't think you could be a playoff contending team if you're not at least somewhat good defensively. Either you're so offensively smothering the other team can't get out of their own end, or you're so good like defensively that nothing ever gets through to your goalie. And I just don't see Ville Husso. I mean, he might do a little bit of what he did with St. Louis last year, but Alex Nedeljkovic has still never really recaptured that form.
Magic,
yeah. So hopefully they're still good because look, Hockeytown, great city. I'd love to go see a game there one time, but
here's the question. Anthony's back, so we'll bring.
Good, Anthony's back.
Who is Detroit passing in the Atlantic? And I honestly, looking at the schedules, now we lose Marc for a second.
No, just for a second. I had to pick up my pen.
But looking at Detroit's only 1 point behind the Rangers for the last wild card spot, and they have a game in hand on the Rangers, but I don't think they're passing any of the 3 teams that are in the Atlantic right now in the standings. I just don't see it. Boston is not going anywhere, apparently. They just got Chucky Brightlights back, so they're looking good. Toronto, they've seemed to, get out of their slump, so they're going to be a consistent regular season team. They'll get their wins. And then Florida is still a very talented team as well. So I don't think they're passing any of those 3 teams. And then Tampa Bay is the first wild card spot. So I just don't think they're passing any of those teams.
Yeah, and Tampa Bay looks like they're getting the house in order. Anthony, Detroit will not be in playoff contention this year.
Well, shot, because I think they're not saying they're going to make it, just be in contention. I think they'll be in contention and be within shouting distance. But I don't see them passing any of those teams either. But I think they will be, at least competing. So that's why I say shot.
All right, Anthony. By the way, I'm glad you came back, and you came back at absolutely the right moment because we got to go back to the Hall of Fame talk. 2 topics about the Hall of Fame, and then we're going to get to our Q&A. Roberto Luongo, 489 wins. And what I have to get on you about is 7 of them were with the New York Islanders, and then 82 after he left the Islanders. I still don't know what Mike Bilberry was thinking. We're going to get on that in a second. But the topic you're going to start with is Roberto Luongo is the greatest player without a Stanley Cup.
I'm gonna say shot because I'm gonna say Jerome McGinley is.
And that's fair. That's fair with Jerome McGinley. So
Yeah.
now we got to get Philks on that one. Who's the best player not to win a Stanley Cup?
Jeez. Iginla is definitely up there for me. I think for me, the greatest to never win the cup though has got to be Marcel Dion.
Oh, thank God you said that one.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to give you
It's
somebody
gotta
else.
be Marcel Dion. I mean, he was the number 2 scorer of all time upon his retirement. I believe he's 5th now, I think, in scoring all time. He's got to be either 5th or 6th.
Owen Yager passed him.
So did Francis, I believe.
Oh, you're talking about scoring. Yeesh.
Scoring, yeah.
Oh yeah. I was just going with goal scoring.
No,
again,
yeah. I mean, Dion's a 700 goal scorer too, I believe.
Yes,
So-
he's one of. I think he's one of 7.
Yeah, I mean,
in my head right now.
Marcel Dion is he's 6th all time. Ron Francis did pass him by about 27 points.
Messier and Yzerman passed him too, right?
No, Yzerman didn't pass him. Yzerman fell 16 points short. Messier definitely passed him. Messier's 3rd behind Yager with 1887.
Mm.
So for me, it's got to be Marcel Dion. If you look at the list, I mean, he's a Hall of Famer, 4-time. It says 4-time All-Star on a Hockey Reference, but I think that might be 4-time first
Selected.
All-Star team. 2-time Pearson winner. He won the 1980 Art Ross over Wayne Gretzky based on more goals. 2-time Lady Byng winner. I mean, he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 100-point seasons, and he probably should have had, I would say, at least one more because he missed some games in 1984. But I mean, he's easily the greatest player to never win a Stanley Cup for me. So I would say Jerome McGinley is probably number 2. And then Roberto Luongo might be number 3 for me.
And I'm glad you said that because I want to say Henrik Lundqvist.
Maybe Henrik Lundqvist be 3.
I'm not saying Henrik Lundqvist, by the way.
I'm going to say, yeah.
It's going to be a shot for me as well because you said Marcel Dion and I don't have to, I could say Jumbo Joe. And Joe Thornton is up there as one of the best that never won a cup. And unbelievable that he never won a cup. I'm still in disbelief about it. But I mean, after all, there's somebody that was on Twitter just today that I just read their comments that they're saying, "Oh, I wouldn't even say Henrik Lundqvist deserves to be in the Hall of Fame." What?
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's trolling because Devils.
Dan Marino, Ted Williams. The sports are littered with guys that haven't won that were great because sometimes you get you don't get the opportunity, and sometimes you make the most of your opportunity. That's 2 different things. But it's just when it comes to that, don't just say no championships, because what I always love to do is I love to trap people and say who's a better first baseman, Keith Hernandez or Don Mattingly, and wait for the Yankee fan to say Don Mattingly so I can go, well, he's got 0 world championships to Hernandez's too. So your reasoning is stupid right there. I don't put one ahead of the other, by the way. I don't.
Another name that doesn't get talked about a lot in this conversation, and he's one of the very, very, very best passers to ever play the game, is Adam Oates.
Adam Oates.
Yeah.
I mean, I look at him like Thornton. Like Thornton won that MVP and that scoring title in 06. That was his big year. But Adam Oates, I mean, he finished 3rd in points in 93 behind Lemieux, who had possibly the greatest season ever that year, and Pat LaFontaine, who had the greatest season by an American-born player ever that year with Alexander McGillney's 76 goals in Buffalo. So I definitely want to put Adam Oates there. Peter Stastny definitely belongs on that list as well. Pete just mentioned.
Oh, let me throw in another one of you guys because we're talking about great players not in the Hall of Fame. You can't believe that they're not in the Hall of Fame. Curtis Joseph.
Curtis Joseph, I said, should have been in the Hall of Fame. I don't understand it. He was, I think, 5th all time in wins upon retirement, and I get it. I get why sometimes like people would not put him in there because He doesn't have the Olympic gold. He doesn't have a Stanley Cup, and he doesn't have a Vezina. But Curtis Joseph was probably a top 5 goalie in the greatest generation of goaltending ever. And if he hadn't played in that generation, he probably would have won 2 Vezina trophies. Think about the guys ahead of him. Hasek, the greatest of all time. Patrick Waugh, my number 2. Marty Brodeur, considered by some the greatest of all time. Eddie Belfour was another one in that generation. I mean, that generation had so many great goaltenders. Tom Barrasso, Mike Vernon, John Van Beesbrook, Mike Richter. I mean, that to me, that's the greatest goaltending generation ever. But yeah.
And it was also in a generation where goaltending techniques were changing.
Yes.
Like that's the other thing too. Butterfly goalies were becoming.
Grant Fury even played into the 90s and played very good hockey in the 90s.
Yeah. So, Anthony, can you give us one more that you look at and go, how does that guy never won a cup?
Well, not really, because his teams were never really that close. But Shane Doan was a really good player that never won a cup.
Shane Doan. And
yeah, I don't know if I could. I would put him a little further down the list.
But that's because his teams were never good.
But he also never put up big numbers, though. Like his best years were like a 30-goal, 70-point year.
Yeah, that's true.
And he was pretty consistent.
Well, during a dead puck time.
But I mean, all right. So what about Dale Hawerchuk?
There's another one.
Dale Hawerchuk, 1,400 points, one of the very best players of an entire decade in the 80s. I mean, Matt Sundin. I would put Matt Sundin before Shane Doan.
Phil, so we're actually going to go on to the next topic so we can get the Q&A and shortly after this.
Phil Housley.
Which is same thing. Phil Housley, by the way, there's another one, the first American 100 to 1,000 points. I mean, the Hockey Hall of Fame should only be pro hockey. Anthony, we'll start with you on this one.
Pro hockey is in what? Guys getting in who've played.
NHL, I guess. NHL Hall of Fame.
So it should just be
NHL Hall of Fame. Or does it do a service by being the international game that it is? This is more of a discussion topic, but I think Bar Talk.
All right, so we're not in a Bar Talk format. I think you're actually doing a game of disservice by limiting it to the NHL. I've seen people call for Manon Rhéaume to be in there, and again, I think Trailblazers should go in, and what Manon Rhéaume has done for women's hockey should definitely be acknowledged. I think that she's done a lot for women's hockey. I mean, if you look at her overall body of work, it's not great, but as somebody, again, like I said, the body of work is decent enough, and she's an absolute trailblazer and one of the biggest trailblazers of any woman that's ever played the sport. So I definitely think she deserves it. And this comment right here from THG is really good. You know, you got to recognize greats like Triniak.
Yeah.
Triniak probably the best player to never play in the NHL.
Yep.
I have to agree with you 100% on that one.
Yeah, definitely.
Easily the best player to never play in the NHL. I mean, if you want to put together a list of your top like 5, Triniak's number 1, and then if you want to look at like Boris Mikhailov and Valery Kharlamov, who I think would have absolutely destroyed the NHL in the 70s if he played in the 70s and into the 80s before his awful car accident that took his life. But those are probably the top 3 to never play in the NHL, if you ask me.
So, Anthony, you think it should be strictly pro hockey, or you're doing the game a disservice by not doing that?
I agree with Phil. I think it should be for guys outside of the NHL, because we just mentioned a lot of good examples, Triniak being one of the best of those examples.
And by the way, going with what I was kind of saying before, this is where you can make the case Mike Richter gets in. 300 wins during a time where 300 meant something. Now it's 400 is really the number. So you have 300 wins. Then you have the fact that he was an Olympian in 88, 98, and 2000. I I'm pretty sure I'd have to look at this, but he's
2002.
probably got the most wins for an American goaltender in the Olympics. I could think of 9 off the top of my head, or sorry, 8. I mean, so I mean, it could be there, but I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say Mike Richter is like one of the best goalies of all time. No, I'm not. But it's just that's where you get guys. That's where you get some of these guys with international moments that get concerning. Phil, you talked about this with Turgeon, that he basically got blackballed from Team Canada.
So that came down to that incident in '87 where the Canadians and the Russians fought in that junior game where they had that big brawl that broke out basically almost over the entire ice surface. Turgeon was one of less than a handful of players who didn't take part in that brawl, and he got a lot of backlash for that from Team Canada. And if you look at the selections, I mean, when did Pierre Turgeon ever get selected for Team Canada? Like, he could have been there in 1996, but no, he wasn't there for that. For some reason, he wasn't selected for that. And to me, I mean, there's obviously no way to confirm it, but a lot of people would tell you that he got blackballed. He absolutely got blackballed. And I mean, his international resume ends after that 1987 disqualification for that brawl. He had 3 goals in 6 games in that tournament, and there was just nothing after that. So I think that does play a part of it with the whole Hall of Fame snub for Turgeon. But again, I really don't think you should cut people off at the NHL pass here. I don't think that helps anybody or anything.
All right. I mean, it's fair enough. So, Anthony, final word on this. What do you think?
I think, simply put, if you're an outstanding hockey player, no matter what league you play in, and are kind of a trailblazer as well, I think that should open the door for you to be in the Hockey Hall of Fame.
I don't think there's a better closing sentence we probably could have come up with right there. So
Yeah.
nice. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So guys, that's going to conclude the Big Apple Hockey Bar Talk, where we're going to move on to questions and answers in a second, go around the league and some rumors. So thanks everybody for joining us on that. Let's go around. What news are you guys hearing? Anthony, what are you hearing around the league right now?
I mean, not much. I know there was the GM meetings the other day, and they talked. Mike Greer was talking about if he'd be willing to move Erik Karlsson. He said obviously Karlsson has control over where he goes. So that's really upon him. If he decided he wanted to go somewhere. I mean, if there was a team that was willing to take on some of that contract, if San Jose, retain some salary, I think with the way he's playing right now, you might get a team that's interested. So there was that going around. And then, Craig Button yesterday when he was saying that he thinks Bo Horvat's done in Vancouver. Other than that, I mean, there's not really, too much chatter in roster movement regards, but
there's that rumor that the Senators can acquire a defenseman.
Yeah.
That's been going on since the dawn of time.
Yeah.
Hey, big name they threw out there, Jacob Chikrin.
And
everybody's surprised.
I think Armstrong said he should be returning around the 21st of this month. So maybe once he actually plays and teams see, how he's doing and he's healed, I think maybe they'll re-engage there. But I don't think Ottawa, with the way they started their year, I don't know if it'd be wise to give up assets to acquire Jacob Chikrin. But I do think at some point Chikrin will be dealt. I just don't know if it will be to Ottawa. But
Ottawa 591 this year, by the way.
Not much chatter. Those were the real, I guess, main 3 type of headlines, if you will. But I mean, the biggest one, Bo Horvat, he's playing phenomenal right now. He's got 14 goals. I think he's got 20 points. He's their captain. He brings a lot more to the ice than his offense. He brings a lot of intangibles. And, for Vancouver, a team that's looking like they could go through a retool or a rebuild, based on what he also wants, what they're going to have to pay him, I think it would be wise to move him. You'll probably get a decent amount of assets, as we talked about in the Bar Talk segment. So there will be a lot of teams lining up for Bo Horvat's services, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think he would get, in terms of like free agency, I think he would get something below what Mika Zibanejad and JT Miller signed for. I think you're looking at like $7.5 to $8 million for that, depending on how he finishes this season. But he's going to be somebody that's going to be available. A lot of teams will be able to take on his cap hit at the deadline. It's going to be affordable, even if Vancouver has to retain salary. And goal scoring is at a premium. So when you have a guy having a season like this, if this continues, pretense obviously there, but if this continues, then you're looking at somebody who's going to be in very, very, very high demand. There's going to be a bidding war for him because I don't believe he has any type of trade protection on him.
No,
he doesn't.
No,
he doesn't.
so,
I looked it up last year. The only thing that he had that was any trade protection was he had one more year on his deal, or he's still got one more year right now, or he's got
he's a free agent at the end of the year.
Yeah, he's a UFA.
Yeah, he doesn't have any type of trade protection. So unlike a certain right winger from Chicago who's 34, about to be 34 years old, and rumored to be to one of the New York teams here, or possibly both. But
I still think the Islanders are better off getting Tarasenko because I don't see St. Louis really. I understand that St. Louis is like 2 points out of a playoff spot. It's still very early, but it's just St. Louis ain't playing like the team that we thought they were going to be. 2 games under 500. They're 12 points. They're 4 points back of Minnesota. Obviously, you win those games. Of Colorado, because you got to get to the 3 seed. You got to win your games at hand, but you got to win those games at hand. St. Louis ain't playing like it. And you know what? Jordan Binnington, that guy that won that Stanley Cup, he ain't walking through that door. And speaking about another guy that's hurting my fantasy team. But if that's the case, go over to Tarasenko. The asking price is much less for the Islanders, and they got a trigger man right there, I think.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking cost-wise, Tarasenko will be less than what Kane and Horvat will get, for sure. But I mean, St. Louis, you would think they would move Tarasenko based on how they're playing right now, but there's also no guarantee. I'm sure they believe what they did a couple of years ago, where they were the worst team in the league. That they could do it again and still try to make the playoffs. So I don't think they're going to make any determination on Tarasenko until much later in the season. So who knows if he'll be available or not. Whereas Patrick Kane, I got to believe that Kane's going to be available no matter what.
Everybody wants it. I know that everybody wants to bring up that instant. Let me just go back to that one more time. And I know Phil's chomping at the bit. Let's get him in here. But people talk about that season. That was just like the Vegas year, the year before, it was a perfect storm. You had a team that was changing their head coach. They switched to Craig Berube. I want to say they switched from Mike Yeo, but I'm not too sure on that one, guys. Then they went to Jordan Binnington from Jake Allen. So now you have a new goalie and a new coach, now a new system. And Binnington just caught fire. I mean, I remember I had a fantasy week. I had him and Vasilevsky. I had 4 shutouts in that 1 week. And the only reason why I didn't have 5 was because they 2 played each other. They had a 1-0 game that went to overtime. So that change isn't coming in St. Louis. It's not happening.
They just came out and they endorsed the coach. The general manager endorsed Craig Berube, said he's not going anywhere. So it's on the players to figure it out. But I see the comment here. Why would team gamble on Chychrun? Hurting the one great season from him. You know what? I think a guy that's going to start generating some interest real soon, because I think they're going to be out of it sooner than later with the way that they're playing in Anaheim, is John Klingberg.
You were mentioning that actually on your Twitter today. I was actually going to highlight it. I didn't. Yeah,
that's something that I think it would be a great target for the Rangers, depending on the cost. Could you imagine getting Klingberg and moving him to the second pairing with Keandre Miller, and then moving Jacob Trouba down to the third pairing and having him play with somebody else? I mean, that could absolutely shore up your defensive problems right there. But I think a lot of teams are going to be on him because I think he's making $6 million against the cap. and that's going to be affordable for a lot of teams. And Anaheim's going to be able to eat the space or eat the contract if necessary. So they eat the 50% and retain it to make sure that a deal gets done. But or $7 million. Sorry, he's making against the cap. So, but Anaheim's got the space. They can make things happen. I mean, they've got the deadline cap space that they're going to be projected to have is about $57 million in deadline cap space. So they don't have a lot of big contracts on the books. Their highest paid forward in terms of AAV is Adam Henrique at 5.825, Jakob Silverberg right behind him at 5.25, Schreienstrom at $5 million, because you have guys like Trevor Zegras that are still on their rookie contracts, and then they're going to get big deals.
Mm-hmm.
So him and Jamie Drysdale, who's actually hurt. I wonder if Anaheim also moves John Gibson. John Gibson has 4 years left after this at $6.4 million. He's still one of the better goaltenders in the league. But you got to
there's got to be a trophy that eventually they just give out of saying player X has been in the most trade rumors since Y, because John Gibson is, if it's not him, it's Jacob Chikrin. They've had the most amount of trade rumors ever. Like,
that's definitely become one of those situations where the player has been eternally on the block for God knows how long. So, but yeah, I like this comment too. John Klingberg on power play 2 over Jacob Trouba. I mean, that could definitely help power play 2 out big time because they need a shot.
Sorry, Phil. What's power play 2? Because I'm not sure if the Rangers know it.
Yeah,
so
they don't really use it, but but
Alexander Ovechkin looks at power play 2 for the Rangers and goes, "Can you at least put power play 2 on ice a little bit?" Oh, come on.
Could you imagine him on power play 1 and maybe moving Adam Fox out of it? I don't think they would ever do that because Adam Fox is really good at moving the puck. But I mean, John Klingberg is much more of a shooting threat than Adam Fox, and that would give them a look that they haven't had in a while there.
And like the Rangers have a lot of things they have to figure out, just even structurally speaking, with that. Because by the way, I do want to say one of our followers, Chris T, put it on the page, and I haven't been able to follow it on our Facebook page. Feel free to join in our Facebook groups and or our page as well. But the topic of, I've gone over this a million times. Why is it that Lucas Raymond is doing this or Tim Stützle is doing this, and in the meantime, Alexei Lafreniere and Kaapo Kakko aren't doing anything? Well, the answer to that, again, is the Rangers aren't putting them in positions where they're going to be big-time scorers. It's not happening. And it's just, this is where we talked about this before, Phil. This is where maybe Kaapo Kakko on the bumper is a better option. I mean, being a lefty shot, maybe that actually opens things up. Maybe Alexei Lafreniere over in the Ryan Strome spot that was over on the side, occasionally the bumper. Like, good power plays have to do different things and open things up. Those guys haven't, if they went to a bottom of division team like in Arizona, they'd be first line, getting first line minutes and doing much better.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, you got to put your young guys in optimal positions to be able to produce, and just the Rangers just haven't done that. And that's a big part of the problem. I mean, we're talking about, Anthony saying, Lafreniere's got to start giving you points. Kakko's got to start giving you points. Totally agree. But I mean, if you're not going to get time on power play 1, where are these points coming from?
Yeah, you got to do it at 5-on-5 then. And what's the Rangers' problems? 5-on-5. And how many times have we said Kaapo Kakko was the best player of the ice? Happened a lot.
So,
all right. We'll see if there's maybe like 1 or 2 more questions if you want to.
Yeah, maybe like 5 more minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually going to be flying to Nashville for one night. Tretiak would be, by the way, Chris T, speaking of which, Tretiak would be a top 4 goalie of all time. I would agree with that 100%.
You addressed that in the chat itself. I responded to that one.
You did. I did see you say that. But I mean, Vladislav Tretiak, they used the line in Miracle of if you scored on him, save the puck because it doesn't happen too often.
Yep.
So, and I'm gonna look into a Rangers meetup, at least 2 Rangers meetups soon. I want to see if I can find an 8 o'clock game, maybe against Chicago or something like that. I'm still looking to go to my first Rangers road game of the year. I'll be going to my first Islanders road game in Nashville tomorrow night. But I already did Nashville as a city, so I might not do a big video about that. Because there would be a love. Yeah, there'd be a lot of that. Yeah, Pete, I'd love to tell you. And by the way, Phil, I was going to suggest to you guys, if you guys want to try to go to that Stadium Series game in Carolina, I'd be up for that. So, especially since I hear about the tailgating there is great. So, but what do you think about what Chris is saying right there?
What?
By the way, Wicked, you're right about it. I know Phil just responded, but Red Army, great documentary. But it also, the other great part about that is that goes into what happened with Fetisov and the Devils for years, because the Devils were drafting a lot of these Russian guys. But Chris T did say this: Panarin starting to turn in the Matt Zuccarello syndrome. Yeah, Matt's did kind of look a little bit out of sorts at times.
I would definitely take him back in a heartbeat, though. He could fix that problem. Minnesota
definitely fix that power play. Yeah.
Minnesota ate a couple of maybe ate like $1 million or $2 million in that, and it didn't cost too much. I would definitely take Matt Zuccarello back in a heartbeat at that point, because he's what Kreider and Zibanejad miss, and those three would have instant chemistry. They've played together before, 2018-19, and they would be I think they would be a really good line again.
I don't think that's true about Stromer and Trocheck have been playing similar. I kind of went off on somebody about Twitter that said, "Oh, look, Ryan Strome scored. How about that guy?" You're like, yeah, he's just as irrelevant as the team he plays on. Again, if you think Ryan Strome was what losing Ryan Strome is costing the Rangers a Stanley Cup, you're absolutely wrong. Sorry, guys.
The only thing that's really similar is that they have the same amount of points. They actually have the same amount of goals, assists, and points. Strome has it in one less game, but Trocheck has been a far better defensive player than Strome. And part of the reason why Anaheim is so bad is because Strome just doesn't give you anything defensively. He's just not a good player in that regard. He's not a good all-around player.
And while you're there, how about the penalties? How similar are they?
I mean, penalty-wise, Strome has 8 minutes in penalties. Trocheck has 8 as well. Wow. Okay.
All right. Don't worry. That'll change. Trocheck's penalties are still going to be better than...
Strome has 5 goals on 28 shots. And Trocheck has 5 goals on 61. But Strome has a far worse Corsi for percentage at 48. And he starts 53% of his starts in the offensive zone. Trocheck starts 61% of his in the offensive zone, but has a Corsi for percentage of 57.2, which is actually really good. But
Phil, I got to highlight Alex's one right here. Now, he says, Mark, believe it or not, Panarin may be wanting out by next year. He looks frustrated out there.
I don't see.
I'll tell you what, if that happens, that's going to be a mutual breakup.
No, I don't see where he looks frustrated. I think he needs he needs another guy on that line. Like, you can't play with two guys
Yeah.
on one line and expect to win games. Like, it just, I don't agree with this at all. He's literally on pace for, I think, about 100 points, if I'm correct. So I don't understand where you're getting this from. And I know he's been not good at 5-on-5. Like, he needs to be better. But again, when your top six is devoid of right wing production, that's what happens. So,
well, we're going to be looking at a lot more. And yes, they need to try. They need to try something. I'm thinking, Core, I like that idea of Kako and Laffy, but then you fear losing Kreider. So, I mean, maybe I guess you could do that.
Kreider eventually is going to have to go.
Yeah, the problem is also with Alexei Lafreniere is he went to a team with two entrenched left wings. That was another thing we acknowledged. I think on our first couple shows, Phil and I acknowledged that, but that was like the first ones ever. All right, guys, I'm gonna play the music. We'll start to sign us off right now because next week we're gonna be doing things that we're thankful for in the NHL, or one thing each one of us, and also kind of do who are the turkeys of the NHL this year. There's a lot of them, especially we got a lot of people. It's like NHL is we say all the time. Why is it the best game, the worst run league? Which I'm not even concerned. I think the NBA is worst run, but that's a different story. And the NFL. And actually, who's really the best run league? They're all competing for the worst. I mean, Rob Manfred's doing everything he can to destroy baseball, but that's a different story. All right. Guys, thank you very much for joining us. We're going to get out of here. I got to get this up for the audio podcast. And we're actually going to be doing an early show next week. We're going to try to get on by about 5:30. I will be in my Boss Kroger shirt because I'll be working next Wednesday night. Goody. It's everybody's favorite night of the year, especially if you're a bartender. Phil, last word?
Yeah, hopefully the Rangers show up to play tomorrow night and take 3 or 4 on this road trip because they need it.
Very critical road trip for them. You don't want to be behind the 8 ball when that happens. So anyway, again, everybody, thanks very much for joining us. And I have a lot more for you